Today, we revealed the newly discovered affliction of the brain known as Boris spongiform encephalopathy, which particularly affects Islington residents. But today, we can reveal another plague outbreak that this country has suffered from, the occult of the expert with their voodoo charms. In recent decades, the democratic arm has handed things over to the bureaucratic arm. The idea that experts will do things fairly and properly and they don't need the supervision of people who are held to account by voters. We saw this with the European Union. We still see it with the ECHR. We saw it with SAGE during the pandemic, which locked us down more than we discover we now needed. And we see it every 6 months with the Office for Budget Responsibility. But perhaps most seriously, we see it with the Bank of England, the old lady of Threadneedle Street. And the Bank of England now benefits from the constitutional concept that the king can do no wrong. The Bank of England is thought to be so above politics and so wise and good that the raising of the eyebrow of the governor of the Bank of England will set us always on a straight course, keep us on the straight and narrow, make our economy grow and work. And yet we've had 11 consecutive rises in interest rates with inflation at over 10%. Now, the Bank of England has one job. That is to keep inflation at 2%, plus or minus 1%. It has to write a billet-doux to the Chancellor of the Exchequer if it misses that target. And it has bungled this very basic task. Its essential task it has not got right. And the reason for that is that it hasn't paid attention to the growth in the money supply since it started with quantitative easing as a very sensible response to the economic crash of 2008. But instead of beginning to normalise interest rates in the mid-20-teens, it kept them at falsely inflated levels, and this has built up an excess of money in the system, and we all know that money must find a home. And one of the homes it finds is in higher prices, and they pumped in even more money during COVID, lower interest rates, more quantitative easing, funding government debt, and this has led, as night follows day, to inflation. This is not something that surprises economists. Economists know that if you pump money out, eventually it will feed through to prices. And now they've had to slam the brakes on very harshly. And this has a real effect. It has a real effect in two ways. First of all, of course, inflation is damaging economically. It is a tax on the poor, and it is a tax on the retired and those with savings. Those in work will catch up with their wages eventually, but those on fixed incomes lose out particularly, and the least well off are the most hit by it. But it also hits those as interest rates spike who have mortgages. So those who are aspirational, trying to do their bit, trying to improve their standard of living, buying their own home, upgrading their house, have been caught by this increase in interest rates, and people who are thinking of buying their own home, who thought they'd got their own personal budget in a situation where they could afford to buy their own home, are caught out. And this has been because not just of the Bank of England, but central banks generally suffering from groupthink. They thought they were so clever that they could trump historic rules of economic outcomes and likelihood. And they suffered from no democratic control. They felt that they could do whatever they liked and the politicians would take the blame. Well, we don't believe that here on GB News. We believe the people know best, which is why we're always asking you for your views. Voice of the people is the voice of God. So please get in touch, which is what we always want you to do, at mailmog@GB News. Give me your views and I will read them out. But I'm